I, Mrs. Manisha Chaudhary from Saraswati Vidyalaya Union High School, Pune, welcomes all the students of Standard 9. Today, we will continue with English, Unit 3.4, How the First Letter Was Written, Part 2. Let us continue further, students. Taffy sat down too, with her toes in the water and her chin in her hand, and thought very hard. Then she said, I say, Daddy, it's an awful nuisance that you and I don't know how to write, isn't it? If we did, we could send a message for the newspaper. Just then, a stranger man came along the river, but he belonged to a far tribe, the Tevaras, and he did not understand one word of Tegumai's language. He stood on the bank and smiled at Taffy, because he had a little girl, daughter of his own at home. Tegumai drew a hank of deer sinews from his mendie bag and began to mend his spear. Now, when the spear was broken, Taffy sat down too with her toes in the water because they were near the river Vagai. They had come for fishing. So, she sat with her toes in the water and her chin in her hand and thought very hard. So, these children usually do that. And Taffy was a small girl, a child, so she put her toes in the water and her chin in her hand and started thinking. Then she said to her father, she said to Tegumai, I say, Daddy, it's an awful nuisance. Now, here, awful means strange, nuisance means a situation which is very inconvenient. And then suddenly she said that it's an awful nuisance that you and I don't know how to write, isn't it? If we did, we could send a message for the newspaper. Now, as the house was far away, students, so Taffy could not go. So she said that it is such a strange, inconvenient situation. But if we would know to read and write, then we could have sent a message for the newspaper. Just then what happened? One stranger man, he came along the river, but he belonged to a far off tribe, the Tevaras. Now students, during those period, that is during the Neolithic time, there were various different tribes. People of different tribes lived. So just then, one stranger man came, he was a Tevara, and he did not understand one word of Tegumai's language. So whatever language Tegumai and Taffy spoke, this stranger man, the Tevara, did not understand that. He just stood there on the bank and smiled at Taffy because he himself had a small girl daughter at home, and so he smiled at Taffy because Taffy was also small and she was very much like his own daughter. Now Tegumai, meantime, drew a hank of deer sinews from his mendie bag. He had brought his mendie bag and he removed from that now hank. Hank means a coil or skin of wool or hair of deer sinews. Now sinews means a cord or tendon of the body. So he removed that sinews which were of deer and he began to repair. Mend means to repair his spear. Now let us continue further, students. Come here, said Taffy. Do you know where my mummy lives? And the stranger man said, Silly, said Taffy, and she stamped her foot because she saw a shoal of very big carp going up the river just when her daddy couldn't use the spear. Don't bother, grown-ups, said Tegumai, so busy with his spear, mending that he did not turn round. I aren't, said Taffy. I only want him to do what I want him to do, and he won't understand. Now, students, meanwhile, what happened? The father was busy mending his spear. He did not even turn back to see the stranger man. He did not notice the stranger man. He was busy at his work. And here, the daughter Taffy was trying to converse, was trying to talk with that stranger man, but that stranger man, who was a Tewara, did not understand anything what Taffy was saying. He only said, She asked, do you know where Mummy lives? He just said, Now, Taffy said, silly, and she stamped her foot. Then, Taffy stamped her foot. Now, she stamped her foot because she saw a shoal of a very big carp. That is the fish, and shoal is a collective noun used for a large number of fishes. This carp is a type of a fish. They were just moving about in water when the spear of his father had broken. Otherwise, his father would have caught those fishes. So she just stamped her foot to show her anger that how these fishes escaped, and they were going up the river just when the daddy couldn't use his spear. Now, because she stamped her foot, the father just from that side told her, don't bother grown-ups. That is, do not trouble me. That is what he wanted to say. Tegumai said so. And he was busy mending his spear, and he did not even turn around. Then Taffy replied, I aren't. I only want him to do what I want him to do, and he won't understand. So Taffy just said that he won't understand. So Taffy here was speaking about the stranger, that the stranger is not able to understand and not able to do what she wants to do. But the father did not notice this. Now let us continue further. Then don't bother me, said Tegumai, and he went on pulling and straining at the deer sinews, with his mouth full of loose ends. The stranger man, a genuine Tewara he was, sat down on the grass, and Taffy showed him what her daddy was doing. The stranger man thought, this is a very wonderful child. She stamps her foot at me, and she makes faces. She must be the daughter of that noble chief who is so great that he won't take any notice of me. So he smiled more politely than ever. Now, said Taffy, I want you to go to my mummy because your legs are longer than mine and you won't fall into the beaver swamp, and ask for daddy's other spear, the one with the black handle that hangs over our fireplace. Now, Tegumai, who was busy mending his spear, he said to Taffy, don't bother me. And he went on pulling and straining, that is, to injure or to weaken at the deer sinews with his mouth full of loose ends. So he was busy repairing his spear with the help of that deer sinews. And the stranger man, who was a Tewara, he sat down on the grass, and Taffy showed him that what her father, her daddy, was doing. And the stranger man thought that this girl is a very wonderful child. She stamps her foot at me and she makes faces. And this stranger man, who was a Tewara, he thought that she must be the daughter of that noble chief who is so great that he won't take any notice of me. So, this Tevara, this stranger man, thought that Tegumai was a chief of that tribe. He was a noble person, and this daughter is also a wonderful child who stamps her foot at me and who makes faces. So he smiled more politely than ever. Now, Taffy told him one work. She told him that she wants him to go to his mummy, that is to her house, because he was a stranger, a man, and his legs were big enough to run and go. And she also said that you won't fall into the beaver swamp. So, a marshy area where the beavers are there, you won't fall into that, she said. And you can go and you can get the other spear with black handle that hangs over our fireplace. So, where the fireplace is there in their house, there is another black spear. So, she wanted this Tevara, this stranger, to go and get that black handle spear. Now, till here we will stop, students. Thank you, students.